So it talks about lives, livelihoods, and living. So in that connection, may I call upon Professor Subodh Kandamadan, who's from Administrative Staff College, the Director for Center for Healthcare Management and Program Director for the Healthcare Management Programs at ASCI, and a very close and dear friend to take over the stage and start his session. Subodh.
Good morning, everybody. So I hope I'm audible in the back. Are you all able to hear me? Yes, great. So good morning. So thanks for giving this opportunity. Thanks, Dr. Shamanna. So what I'm going to do in the next 15-20 minutes is to talk about India's emergency preparedness, what lessons we have learned in the last 2 years, 1.5 years to 2 years. I think a lot of things which the eminent speakers in the introductory speech have already covered some of it, but I just want to put across some aspects of which I think we can, as I take over. Yeah. So, let me just let me talk about coming, and afterwards we had a first wave, then a second wave, and now there is this big debate. I think we are all hoping that there's no third wave, right? And we went for a sort of a national lockdown, and then you would have realized that initially there was a lockdown, then they left it to the states to decide. There was a various cases. Kerala, there was a different, peak. Delhi peaked differently. Telangana peaked separately, right? And this is what actually happened in the second wave. So first wave went very peacefully, and the second wave, like most of you decided or heard, there was an oxygen shortage in Delhi. People craving for oxygen. In Hyderabad, people were buying oxygen for 10,000 rupees. This is exactly what happened. And then we realized that the second wave positivity rate was much higher than the first wave. So you can see the daily positivity rate over a period of time. First wave went smoothly, people took it casually, but second wave was much intense. And then you had a new deaths, drastic deaths, number of daily deaths got increased. But what came to us was states which had good health systems. States like Kerala, Tamil Nadu were able to handle the situation much better than many other states. So why did some states do differently? Because what they had actually done before, I think there was a lot of talk about oxygen. You all know that in the first wave itself, a state like Kerala had already procured enough oxygen, worked out on their logistics. But other states actually couldn't do that. They were waiting for the oxygen to come. Now every state has an oxygen. But tomorrow, it is not just oxygen. It could be something else. Tomorrow, it could be a gastro problem. It could be something else. It may affect children. Your logistics has to be developed. Tracing, testing, and treatment. If you look at national level, different states went through different models. Some states went through the proper tracing, testing, and treatment. Whereas some states forgot about tracing, they only did treatment. Some states did only testing and treatment. And because we can't change things overnight. If you look at a state like Kerala, when 2018 Nipah virus, they didn't have a lab in Kerala. They had to send their samples to Pune, and they got back their samples after 72 hours. 2021, Nipah came in Kerala, their entire districts had. What happened to a COVID first wave? In Hyderabad, we had 40 centers for COVID testing, but none of them were there in the districts. Over a period of time, now every district has testing. Diagnostics is something we have done well. Vaccination is something we have done well. But there are many other areas where we have actually not done well. So that's why I'm saying could have been learned from the first wave, not fully, but partially. So what's happened this year? So what's the emergency preparedness we have actually done? We know that from January 21 we are into vaccination. I know very well that in the first month the adherence to vaccination was very low. People were thinking whether to take, what is going to be the side effect, should we do it? There was a lot of vaccine wastage. Came March, second wave started, people started flocking. They wanted more vaccination. Now we are talking about child immunization. Do we want to give vaccination to the children? Now we are actually thinking about it. What happens to new Delta variants? Whether we are able to handle the new Delta, initially they said the Delta will not be covered, but now we know that, okay, it's getting covered under the vaccination. Newer treatments required. Last time they said, okay, there's only an emergency for, certain particular illnesses, but now we hear about mucus and eye problems, newer treatments are required. Herd immunity, have we reached herd immunity? Why are there that a significant third wave has not happened? There could be. What is the compliance fatigue? Kerala is a classic case of compliance fatigue. You all know that Kerala has got a very high number of cases. Why did that happen? Initially, they were very meticulous. They have even went with the concept of reverse quarantine. Before even they said, no, we let us save the elderly people, put them into quarantine so that we can actually take care of them. Now what has happened? People have got fatigued. They can't stay in the houses. There is a compliance, home quarantine. The people who are affected getting, but others were actually roaming around. There was a bigger problems because of that. So what's the way forward we can actually look at? Next. Yeah, so let me talk about the Indian healthcare system a little bit, because at the end of the day, I think you would have heard a lot about the health system strengthening. So I just want to put this across to everybody that we may have done well in vaccination, we may have done well in the vaccine manufacturing, but traditionally India has not done well in health sector. You take the comparison between the countries like India, China, with our now neighboring countries. I think Dr. Reddy talked about Bangladesh. You take Sri Lanka, you take about Philippines, China. Our out-of-pocket expenditure is much higher in the world. People spend from their own pockets for their healthcare. Our percentage of GDP is just 1.1% as compared to 4% or 5% in other states, other countries. So we are ranked around 145 by Lancet. This was in 2018. And from 145, we are now aspiring to be the best in the world. We have a long way to go. So that's where I think a lot of efforts, I'm not painting a negative we are supposed to do. This is your healthcare system. So you all know that there is a primary care system, there's a secondary care system and a tertiary care system. You all know that primary is for preventive and tertiary is for curative. We all know that a lot of efforts are going on in the tertiary care system. Everybody gets better treatment. Hyderabad is a hub of medical tourism, very good facilities. But what happens to the primary care? Where is the money going? If you do a budget analysis across states, 10-15 years back, more than 50% of the budget used to go to the primary care. But now most of the funds are going to the tertiary care. And what is happening? The money in the primary care has not actually increased. Money has been shifted from the primary to the secondary and the tertiary. So now we are talking about communicable diseases, how to prevent COVID pandemics. You need to strengthen your primary care, which act. Now there is a lot of effort. You have heard about this Health and Wellness Center, which is a Government of India initiative now. Why is that they are highlighting along with the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, which is a tertiary scheme, it's an insurance scheme. Along with treatment, you need to also preventive, because you don't want people to end up in the secondary and tertiary treatments. Now COVID has taught us this. So that is why more and more emphasis are now going to the primary care. So what's the scenario, right? Everybody talked about cost of care. Dr. Reddy wanted to aspire that if we can get everybody healthy, give health to everybody with reduced cost, that's where we can actually begin. But what's actually happening now is the public and private sector not really in tandem. So we have a lot of public-private partnership models. You have heard about 108, you have heard of 104, 102 models of healthcare, dialysis being done as PPPs. But there is a sort of a chaotic public-private mix. Can you go and tell now in your dashboard, so we are so much advanced in technology, can you tell in how many beds are free in which hospital, that hospital? When COVID was rampant in the second wave, people didn't know where to go. How many beds were available in the private sector? How many beds were available in the government sector? So that's sort of a confusion. It's not just corporate hospitals. What happens to charity hospitals? What happened to the clinics? There is sort of a chaotic mix. We haven't really decided to work together. So we have not used the PPPs especially. So that's the way forward. But some of you will say that, see, public is more for service, private is making profit. Can we work together? That's what the concerns. We brought in health insurance models. We had out-of-pocket expenditure reduced, because we know that insurance will reduce out-of-pocket expenditure. So these are things which were already there, which actually have sort of helped in mitigating things. So let me just talk about, because what happened, as many of, I think Dr. Shankar also talked in the first session, COVID was, we were adapting, we were very quickly innovating. We also had robots coming in, we had community engagement, doing community engagement, police department, health department, all joining together lot of innovations had actually happened. But we also realized not everybody needs to go to a hospital when you have COVID. That realization happened quite later. Earlier, what has happened? You got a COVID, people are blocking the beds, people are booking the beds. They realized that's not required. You need to have a sort of a first level of a treatment. Only 10% would require a sort of further treatment. Can we not use the primary health centers? That's where states like Delhi, Telangana started using that. They use the Basti Davakhanas as COVID centers, preliminary centers, private clinics, charity clinics. Can we do something about those? Why shift the patients to the tertiary care centers when you had all these facilities? There was also advanced care. I think you all know about the Telangana instead of, I think this is a sort of a health and wellness center which did some work. I think you are familiar with this. Yeah, we know that only 6 to 8% of the people would require a sort of a specialized treatment, and many of them were dedicated institutions were set up. Very few cities were actually set. So this is a part of the emergency preparedness. Dedicated COVID pharmacies. How many? It's not there in the national level, but few states did that. Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, where you want to buy your oxygen, where do you have to go? Right now, many of you ask, where do I get my oxygen? There's people going to the normal medicine ward, but many states created COVID pharmacies. What happens to your manpower? See, there's a lot of infrastructure. So let me tell you, there's no tension about infrastructure. As Dr. Shankar said, we can actually handle another pandemic with the number of beds. But what happened to our frontline workers? They are in the forefront right from January 2020. Many of the nurses have actually left the program. So not only we need to add manpower, how do we retain our existing manpower? Very different methods were applied. 15% rise in charges. We gave them insurance models. Some states even gave them 3-month advance things. Retaining staff is our bigger problem. Infrastructure is something we can do, but how to motivate our staff, that's our emergency preparedness which is actually required. Yeah, so, sorry. Can you just go back? Yeah, so my last couple of points which I want to highlight is health will be a priority in the post-COVID world. So this is all about emergency preparedness. We need to live with the new normal. I'll be very happy if January 2022 we need to be normal, that's fine. But are we ready for the next pandemic? We need increased budget allocation. So we know that a lot of money has been spent, but as I said, we are still at 1.4% of GDP. Can we make it 2 to 3% of GDP to make it better? A very important aspect, mostly neglected, the behavioral change communication. You look at the health budget and you do an analysis there, you will know that there's a lot of money given for behavioral change communication, but that's not been used well. Like how do you bring in awareness? It's not just printing pamphlets and posters. You need to do innovative things. We have done a lot of analysis to see that doctors communicating to the patients directly, personally going to the, to households and telling. Even now, if you go to the field, you will realize that many people are still thinking that if we, take a vaccination, it will affect my child. Those who are going for delivery, they're actually having those doubts. You can only sort this out through a behavioral change communication. Next. Before that? Yeah. So the role of private sector. So this is what the bigger debate. So a lot of people will say private sector charges money. So I always say that public-private partnership is like a sort of a marriage. Public is for service, private we are marrying like a husband and wife. We have to adjust. If you don't adjust, the marriage will fail. Same way PPPs, you need to adjust. But PPP is not only for treatment. Private hospitals are not only for treatment. They are helping us in surveillance, testing, treatment, diagnostics, vaccine. If tomorrow if the private sector walks out saying that okay, only let government only handle the COVID, we will not be able to handle it. Because friends, this is a national emergency. We need to have both public and private tomorrow. Tomorrow we may have a bigger pandemic, but we need to have both the sectors coming together. This is what was told in the national health policy, saying that we need to engage the private sector. But how do you monitor them? How do you work together? That's very important. Next. Yeah. So we need to have a very, very important things which are actually we have learned is the importance of monitoring and health data analytics. Like I said, we are now looking for dashboards. We are looking at where do we get the information. We need to know that there is a national digital health mission. We are now valuing telemedicine. Earlier, everybody said, no, we want to meet the doctor, we want to have the physical touch. I still believe that yes, especially the elderly population, geriatric population would want to be and meet. But they have also realized there should be effective referrals. Now the common thing which the doctors will tell you is, unless you have an emergency, don't come to the hospital. Otherwise, you go to Gandhi or Osmania, 30% or 40% of your cases are either cough or cold or fever. So you go only when you this. Telemedicine is something which are going to sort out things. You will tackle many of your manpower issue. You don't need a doctor in the PHC if you are having a proper telemedicine facility. So we are now looking at innovative ways to this. We are looking at new supply chain models. Earlier, you all know that to import a ventilator, 2 months, 3 months. Now we have broken all barriers. You want oxygen, it's getting imported. I think we need to look at better distribution, better this. When we did a study for what should be the national recommendation, like Dr. Nageshwar Reddy said, oxygen, how do this? We said we have ONGC, we have NTPC, we have containers already available. Why don't you use some of them to bring those models here? Next. So last point, I think a very, very important point, I just want to conclude with that. We need to also improve our health. It's not just health alone and treatment, also your well-being, Ayush, Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddha, Homeopathy, improved immunity. You have better health, you are preventing COVID or any future pandemics. Nutrition, that's the only indicator which has increased over time. Your levels of anemia in an Indian population has increased over time. Your IMR and maternal mortality has decreased, but nutrition, malnourishment has actually increased. Mental health, nobody thought about it. 2 years down the line, what is the mental status of doctors, the other staff, mental status of people who are staying at home, mental status of children studying online, lot of things to be thought about. I think there is already a national mental health program, but newer initiatives are required. Enabling technology, you need to enable technology, you cannot stay away from it. It's now a big need as of now. Yeah, next. So my last word is, we have an increased role, not just as scientists, which actually they are doing a very good job, but we also need the improved role of healthcare professionals, all public health professionals, healthcare management students, bigger role for them in the future. And very, very important, I think this is what the states have realized. What you sow is what you reap. If Telangana did not have a Basti Dawakana, when the COVID testing was happening, they could use that facility. Mohalla clinics were being used for COVID facility. Health and wellness centers, whichever states did well, they could use that as a facility, because you need not just in urban areas, but also in the rural areas. So I think let's ensure that everybody gets better health. I am sure we'll overcome this crisis soon. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Informative presentation. May I now request Dr. B.R. Shabana to please present a memento to Dr. Subodh